I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to Chai Beauty, where I get to share my thoughts, my dreams, my aspirations, my visions for the future. And guess what? You get to be along for this journey because we are in this together. So in the book, it's chapter 2 as the handbook, and then depending on what version you have, it's chapter 3, and it's called Understanding Boundaries. And in that section, we talk. It says compliance to say not compliance, complaints to say yes to the bad, and I use compliance instead. And the reason I say that is because it's like in HR, you're trying to assimilate to something, and the assimilation is fear. It's the fear of not hurting people's feelings. It's the fear of the repercussions. So you're just trying to be compliant. So in the next after our usual transition, you'll hear me say a lot about compliance. But my example for this is when I was in college and saying yes to the bad. I was a part of a sorority, and due to some circumstances, they needed a new leader to bring in new people. And I personally did not want to do this. I just was in a space of I had a lot going on. I've always struggled in school. In particularly, I had failed accounting, and I was retaking accounting to take the incomplete off and the F, and trying to. By the way, I still dropped out the next week, just because that course was too hard for me in that section. And so, with that being said, I knew I shouldn't have said yes to this, but because there was no one else stepping up to the plate, I felt guilty, and I chose to move forward. And I got overwhelmed. I got stressed. I was calling my mom. I was calling people to help me because it was not for me to do, but I still chose to do it. And that being said, I had resentment. Overall, fast forward, it was a great thing. God changed my heart. He was able to help me get the resources to do it, because I had to take a step back to be why am I doing this? What is it for? What was my why behind this? Not just because I want, not just because of guilt. And when God put that compassion into me, I was able to understand that boundary of saying yes to the bad and realizing moving forward, don't just sign up just because no one else won't do it. Sometimes we all just gonna be sitting there and staring at each other. And so I asked you, how have you said yes to something and moving forward worked on the next steps in your life to not do that gut reaction? So we are starting with episode 2, and episode 2 is lied. We are actually starting with chapter 2 in the workbook, which is understanding boundaries. However, it breaks down boundaries. So compliance, saying yes to the bad. There are a lot of things that this chapter talks about, but one of them is if you are a compliant, there are several reasons why the word no means to get stuck in your throat whenever you need to protect yourself. So I thought this was really important because we talk about fear of hurting the other person's feelings, fear of abandonment and separation, a wish to be totally dependent on another person, fear of someone else's anger, fear of punishment, fear of being shamed, fear of being seen as a bad or selfish person, fear of being unspiritual, and fear of your own restriction and critical conscious. And for me, I've had all those fears, and I still deal with them today, and I'm still trying to overcome them. Even as in this current season, I feel like I'm always transitioning, in life and doing something different. But this season has really, like, I've been paralyzed by fear at some point, even now. But like, even as I'm scared, I'm still saying yes, and I'm still working through it and understanding my boundaries. And so it talked about, one of the questions was, have evaluating your life today, have you assumed most of your responsibility out of compassion and not sacrifice? Or have guilt and your internal parent voice being behind many of your current responsibility? And be honest. And what might you do next time? So, as of right now, I'm grateful enough to say that like a lot of the things I have done this season has been out of compassion, just because God has orchestrated me in a season of isolation where like I have no choice but to really think about the choices that I'm making for myself, to really think about the season I'm in. And the crazy thing is, I'm currently 27. I started this podcast when I was 22, and I've gone through a cycle, a full cycle, I would say, that people talk about, which is like the goodness of God, getting God's blessing on stuff. And then also I've gone through the trials and tribulations and trying to figure out what that looks like for me and how I'm overcoming that currently in the storm. And I'm praying that I will reap benefits later. But in the fear of hurting other people's feelings, I think about my childhood and how when I was younger, a parental would use guilt to manipulate me into like doing what I need. Like, they weren't always saying because I said so. It was more like, well, you're hurting my feelings when you do this, and I just feel like you're ungrateful, and I feel like you're not listening. But they never gave me the words to say no, or like, I feel that way. And that book talks about like the certain words that you need as an adult to compensate and to say and to protect yourself from evil. Because if as a child, if you're taking those words of saying no, or saying it whatever way that you articulate, it becomes, you become like, basically you lose a limb, and you can't figure out the evil in the world. Like, you can't decipher what it is. And things like narcissistic tendencies, if you grew up in a house with narcissistic tendency, it becomes familiar with you. And as I've grown in this season, I'm able to be like, oh, if something's familiar to me, I shouldn't just go to it. I should just take a second and pause and be like, why is this familiar to me? Especially if I want different results. And so that was one. I have fear of punishment. Like, I don't want to go to jail. I don't like getting in trouble. I've always had that fear. And it's in this season, you have to take chances, because like, your chances of being successful is so high, because all you're needing to do is just do it. When you do it, you are successful. And that's taught me a lot. And it also has given me fear, because I'm like, oh no, like, what if I don't do it correctly? What if it's different than what it's supposed to do? And God is like, I just need you to do it. I haven't had the fear of being unspiritual. I had the fear of, like, again, others. I definitely had the fear of abandonment. I think even with my friendships, sometimes I'm like, oh, if I tell this person this, they're going to abandon me. But also, I've realized I prayed for those friends, and I prayed for that season of like, of needing them. And they come and go as they please. But the one thing that is constant is God. And remembering that in my season, in this isolation season, the things that God tells me I need to lean on is time. Because as time continues to go, it doesn't stop for no man. And the seasons will change. Like, you're never going to be in this particular place for long. And then him, like, he's always with you, even when you feel alone. And he'll just brush your shoulder, or he'll just be like, you're so beautiful today. And that is how I got into decipher between like that being that saying yes to the bad, and that complacency. I have condemned myself for things that I shouldn't have done. Like, I knew I should have done something, but I just didn't want to let someone down. And so I would say yes, but inside, like, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of money. And then at one point I'd be like, you're not even grateful for what I did. Like, I've done a lot And they're like, I appreciate it. Thanks. Kudos. And I thought about it, like I was looking for a reward. I was like, you don't know how much I sacrificed just to say yes, and now you're not even giving me the reward that I expected, but I never even communicated to you. And so that's been like remembering that feeling of when I said yes, how much energy and how much time it took, because it did take something. It took something away. Everything you do has a cost. You may not see it now, but you're going to see it later, or you might get instant costs. And I would prefer to have good costs, being like, yes, it may have been painful, but like I am compassionate on the inside and out, and I'm not resentful because like I said yes to this when another opportunity came and I couldn't do it because I said yes to this project. And so just deciphering like what that looks like for me, and also relearning what is good and relearning what is bad. And I've been in counseling to relearn those skills. I even went to a psych person to be like, I know something's wrong with me. I need help. Like, does that make sense? Like, I feel that I'm doing something not correct. However, it can be fixed. And also I need words to articulate what I'm saying so I don't hurt that person. Even me being mindful of people's feelings, I want to say it correctly to them, and I want to care for them, and I want to love on them like God has taught me to love on them. But at the same time, I need to say my piece and tell you the why of why I can't do this at this time. And if we are in a good space, and if God has called me to be in space with you, then I'm able to. And I love at the end of the book of that chapter, it says, take a look at the different categories of boundaries and how do you develop boundaries? Why do some people seem to have natural boundaries and others have no boundaries at all? And when I think about saying yes to the bad, I think the yes to the bad is what you've been grown up to. But like once you turn 20, or when you're self-aware, you learn like, yes, these natural boundaries weren't good for me in this season, but now it's time for me to take the responsibility and do what I'm supposed to do. And doing what I'm supposed to do is like unlearning the bad, unlearning that familiarity, and unlearning that guilt, because it's not guilt. It's like something in you said, this isn't safe for you. Something in you said that that you're not being selfish. It's just you don't have the time for it. And they have to understand that I am doing the best that I can do, and hoping that they are able to hear you, see you, value, and know you, and saying, okay, thank you for letting me know. If something else comes up, I'll ask again, and hopefully you're just in a better season. But really thinking about, like, what do you say yes to that you know is bad, or what is familiar to you, and have you even reassessed why that's familiar to you? Hello, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this pod. Also, the past pods and all the ones you anticipate in the future. I've loved your comments and your reviews on Spotify. And as we continue to grow, I continue to think of other ideas. So currently, I'm investing in my website. So visit www.chaibeauty.org. There's no space. And you can see how I'm extending our community together, because we are a family. So thank you.